Hey everybody, this is Stu Smith, and I have a new friend with me today. His name's Gerald Poole, and in all full disclosure, um, he is a online client of mine, and this is a project I've been working on for a while, um, kind of focusing on the what's a good term to not make anybody feel bad, the aging athlete world, right? Because I spent most of my life writing about the 18 to 20-year-old ready to, be in the tactical fitness world, military, law enforcement, firefighters, but that was 20 years ago. And many of my guys that I started writing for back then are now 38, 40 years old and still in the game, or maybe have a long history of aches and pains that they're trying to fight through that so they can still be active. And the reason why I brought Gerald on here is, I think he personifies the person that there are so many out there that I have neglected in my writings. And that's why this whole series is built on people like Gerald. This is, the program for 35, 45, 50-year-old guys that, are broken and are trying to rebuild, or have been seriously ill and trying to rebuild, or haven't done anything for 20 years and are just need to get started again and start building that foundation. So Gerald has had a unique history of this process, and without me talking about it, let's hear it from him. So I guess, Gerald, welcome, first of all.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you for doing this project with me. I think it's really cool that you're going to help me personify some of the very difficult things that is it's hard to verbalize, and it's definitely hard to write about.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted you to know I'm very grateful for you taking your time to do this for me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So I guess my first question is, let's hear about you. Tell us about your background, your experience, in life that's kind of led you to your current and as well as, past fitness levels.
Yeah. So, again, thanks a lot. So I guess I'll just start by saying that, I don't have a tremendously intense background when it comes to sports. I would say that I've always been an active person. In high school, I was a tennis player, and actually a musician for a lot of my high school and college days. So I would say physically I was really active, on the tennis court, and then also in the weight room. I kind of did a lot of weightlifting type stuff, and more of lifting weights 3 times a week and then alternating 3 times a week with cardio kind of thing, kind of like your basic maybe bodybuilding type workout kind of thing, back, and just to give a kind of a frame of reference, I'm 43. So when I talk about high school and I talk about college, you can kind of figure out, how long ago that may have been. So always been really active, but I never played football, I never played hockey, never played basketball, things like that. So again, tennis, and then like a lot of kind of like bodybuilding type stuff. I'd say predominantly in my early to mid 20s. And then kind of just active, I would say maybe casually on and off, throughout the rest of my 20s really, and not getting too intense with any kind of one physical activity.
Okay. Well, what would you say, how about your friends? Where your workout partners, your teammates, how are they doing, in comparison to you? I mean, are you along this journey? You obviously maybe had workout partners, or you have friends that you've met along your fitness journey. During events, maybe you've tried in the past as well.
Yeah. So one thing that'll answer that question, but I also will throw an answer in there that is kind of somewhat related. Is when I talk about like the bodybuilding workouts and things, and this will be relevant here in a second, but those types of workouts, at least in my opinion, are obviously they're good for you. You know, lift weights, help you build muscle and get leaner and bone density and things like that, and increase your cardio, and that's great. But it was mostly done for aesthetics.
Gotcha.
You know, especially when I was younger. It's like, you know, everyone wants to get in and get bigger muscles and things like that. And so why this is relevant is because now, and I've mentioned this to you before, is that's a nice byproduct of training, like, you know, with the PT club and things like that. But really what I'm looking for is function and being capable. And so when you talk about, you know, where are some of my friends and some of the events I've done, transitioning from that kind of bodybuilding aesthetics kind of mindset to more functionality and capability, you know, a lot of the people that I started hanging out with, you know, I went from aesthetics to kind of going, how can I get tougher? How can I be someone who, you know, isn't just, oh, this is getting hard, so I'm going to quit? How can I become somebody that really, really trains hard and then goes, okay, well, you know, this is a nice 40-minute workout, I'm done. And said, no, can I do a 4-hour workout and hang it? And can I transfer those into some of these endurance events like now? So when you talk about like kind of the people that I've been hanging out with, I came to believe that an important part of me becoming more mentally tough and tougher and just better at endurance exercises is surrounding myself with like-minded people. And sometimes it's hard to find people like that, you know, in your immediate circle of friends. You know, I mean, that mindset is not as common as, you know, you would hope it to be. So I started turning to online sources, you know, for that kind of thought process. And a lot of that had to do with, you know, watching, you know, Stu Smith videos or David Goggins videos, reading certain books by people and things like that. So it really went from hanging out with people who wanted to get into the gym to kind of pump up and see how big we could get and that kind of thing, and see how, you know, how much can you bench?
Oh, right? Yeah. I that was, you know what?
Yeah.
I think many people are lying if they don't say that was probably what got them in the weight room in the first place.
Of course.
You know, I was 14 years old. You know, I remember that all the time. It was a contest.
Yeah.
You know, like how much you could bench. And I mean, for when I was growing up, it was Joe Weider workouts,
sure.
You know, in the 80s, you know, 3 sets of 8 and, you know, do a couple of exercises. And I thought I was done with a workout,
right.
You know,
right.
But yeah, things evolve and things change with your desire. So I would say, you know, not to cut you off, but, you know, what is your goal now? You know, let's talk about a short-term goal of 1 to 2 years, and then let's talk about a long-term goal of 50 plus.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And talking about goals, I think I'll start by saying, you know, for me, this became the journey to becoming more mentally tough and things. And why is that important? Why did I want to do that? You know, what significance did it have for me? I got to the point, you know, I'd say, you know, 30 plus, early 30s. And I was thinking, I've got to be capable of doing more. I want to be able to look back on things that I've done, whether it was last week or 20 years ago or whatever, and say, I did really hard things and I hung in there. I want to become my best self. I want to know that when things got hard, that I didn't quit. And, you know, I hate to say this, but I got to be honest. I started getting interested in reading about Navy SEALs and things like that. And, you know, there's a lot of kind of Navy SEAL camps and military inspired events and things like that. And I thought, how cool would it be to do these events? And,
they are good gut checks. They are really good gut checks. And excellent. I think you're talking about Mark Devine's, right? His program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great guy. Great gut check. Good challenge.
Yeah. Great challenge. And I mean, as embarrassing it is to talk about, it's very real. So I think you need to talk about what's real in order to get better, right? Because I think too much of the time we sugarcoat things and make excuses for why things don't work.
So, but before you do though, let's talk about this. Your foundation was gym workouts,
Yes.
aesthetics,
Yes.
maybe 30, 45-minute workouts,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, something longer. And then
Yeah.
you say, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start focusing on these tougher workouts. Right. And so, you know, that's where I talk a lot about, you know, tactical fitness, you know, and it really does depend on your fitness foundation, you know, before you start attempting some of these hard challenges. And some of that transition from this fitness foundation of powerlifting or weightlifting or whatever into these harder challenges, you know, may take a good year or more, you know. So, and this is what I tell tactical athletes that are trying to be military, law enforcement, and firefighters. However, the reason why you are on here is because you are my tactical athlete personified for civilian purposes. And what I mean by that is we all need to be tactical athletes. And maybe we call them functional athletes or functional fitness or whatever. There's so many terms to describe what I'm trying to say. But basically, it's when there's an accident that happens, there are two types of people. There are people who need to be saved, and there are people who are doing the saving. Right. And I have been a big proponent of being in a good fitness foundation and abilities so that when something happens, I can be the helper. You know, as long as something doesn't bad happen to me and I break my leg, you know, when something bad happens. But when there's something goes down, you know, I want to be able to be the guy who can save my family, save a victim, you know, from whatever circumstance, and have that physical ability to know that my fitness can save lives. Right. And so that's when we talk about tactical fitness, I want people to realize that it's not just for military, law enforcement, and firefighters. It's really for everybody. And I wanted to share that with you because after talking with you for a while, I realized that this is what you are trying to do.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, that's fantastic. And that's exactly right. I don't want to be, you know, and I mean, I'm not trying to you know, get down on anybody and their specific goals, but, you know, I don't want to be the guy when I walk into the gym that's wearing the muscle shirt, you know, kind of strutting around and stuff like that. You know, I want to be someone who's, you know, I'm not doing this so that I can get noticed by people. I'm doing this so that I can be capable.
Yes.
And something happens. And you know what? I think especially during the, you know, these times, I think that's very relevant. You know, unfortunately, you turn on the news and you see a lot of crazy things. You know, you see a lot of people who, you know, with these shootings going on, and you know, I mean, things like that. Or what if, you know, my kid falls into a swimming pool? Am I going to be able to jump in there and get him without getting in trouble myself?
Yes.
So I think being a tactical athlete is more relevant to civilians than most civilians even believe or would begin to imagine. I think it's very relevant from everything. It doesn't have to be catastrophic events. It doesn't have to be me trying to save my child and my wife from something or getting the kids out of the house in a fire. It can be, you know, and I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. It can be both of them wanting to be carried at the same time.
Yeah. There you go.
And that happens a lot. So, and you talk about aging athletes at 43. I want to be, you know, instead of people at high school graduation saying, "Hey, your grandpa's here," and them going, "No, that's my dad." You know, I want them to, you know, I want to be rolling with them still.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and I think the tactical mindset and being a tactical athlete will help me, will enable me to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So let's talk about some of the things that you've gone through, right? So whenever you started on this journey with these tactical fitness programs, some of the challenges or events that you've done, and just kind of made you recircle and come about attacking those in a different way.
Yeah. So that's really for me like the crux of this, because, you know, we mentioned SEAL Fit in, you know, Mark Devine's camps early on, and again, like, you know, some of being honest with myself is hard. it's hard to admit some of the reasons why I wanted to do certain things or my failures, but I think you have to in order to get better. And you have to realize the strength in saying, hey, I can't be satisfied with failing. I can't be satisfied with this. So I need to confront what I did wrong, and I need to figure out how to fix it, and I need to move forward. So unfortunately, Stu, when I was, in my early 30s and I wanted to try some of these things like SEAL Fit, I still had that mentality of, the muscle workouts. I was still thinking, hey, wouldn't it be cool to go through this? Wouldn't it be cool to do that? Wouldn't it be cool to tell somebody that I did this? And that's not the right way to do it. That's not the right reasons. That's garbage to be able to go, oh, I want to do this so I can tell someone I did it. And so I tried to go to the SEAL Fit camp, initially, doing, bodybuilding workouts 3 times a week, cardio 3 times a week for 40 minutes or an hour. And then having the mentality of, oh, this will be cool. I can say that I did this, and I failed miserably. Right. And it was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. I quit.
I tell people all the time, man, there's no 30, 40-minute workout that's going to prepare you for a day of spec ops training.
Oh, no.
And it really do have to put in your time. When you say you failed, what happened? Was it a physical breakdown? Was it being cold, miserable, mentally challenging? When you say you failed, what happened?
Yeah, great questions. Because I actually, and admittingly, and as I have to be truthful with myself and everybody else, is I tried this thing twice and quit twice, and both for very different reasons. The first reason was I just had no clue what I was getting into. I had no clue at all. I was underprepared from a physical and a mental standpoint. I just had no idea, and I had no idea about the intensity, about the pacing. I had no idea about the types of exercise. I thought, a plank hold for any more than 30 seconds was, who people don't do that. People don't try to do a plank hold for 20 minutes or whatever it is. So I just was not prepared at all. And I think I made it through, for, I don't know, 6 hours or something. And I just said, you know what, I got to quit. I can't continue physically. And I think more than that, it was mentally. I just didn't understand at the time. So a year came and went, and you know what, man, there was a big lack of maturity and emotional awareness, emotional intelligence. And I kind of mix all that stuff in with mental toughness. I think maturity and emotional intelligence are critical in developing your mental toughness. I went back and I just quit right before I even started. And that was for a different reason. So, we talk about anxiety, and I've had a hard time controlling fear and things like that in my life. And I would have all these ideas in my head about what I want to accomplish and what I want to achieve. And it seemed so clear. And I would go to execute, and it would just fall apart because of that anxiety. So the second time around, like, all these CrossFit guys were there, like some of the best CrossFit guys, like, that were doing CrossFit competitions and winning.
Yeah, I think I remember that event.
Yeah, yes.
I remember that. It was, made the news a little bit.
Yeah, and I showed up there, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to hang with these guys. This is modeled after Hell Week. It's modeled after, being a good team member, about pulling your weight, about helping your team. I'm not going to be able to help these guys. I want to be a liability. So right off the bat, that type of thinking got into my head, and I just was like, I don't even try to hang with these guys. And so those are really two different reasons, at two different attempts, and of why kind of I tried that, and I quit. And so this is in my early 30s. I'm 43 now, early to mid 30s. And I kind of resigned to the fact that, you know what, this isn't for you. You're not, you really wanted to do these things. At that time, it was for the wrong reasons, which is another reason I didn't make it. We talk about having powerful whys and strong whys, and I have a totally different set of whys now. So I kind of those ideas went dormant for several years. And then I started getting that itch again, in my late 30s. And the reason why is because I got married and I had kids. And my whys for what kind of dad I wanted to be kind of shaped why I started getting back into this and saying, no, you can do this. You just got to take a different approach.
There you go. Yeah, you know what? Whys, they come in all different packages. You know what I mean? I mean, some people are why just because they like the adrenaline rush. Some people are, have the whys of, I want to do it, because I want to show people I can do it and show them the patch. I mean, whys, there's no good or bad why, I don't think, and especially if you're under the, I guess, mindset of you can't argue with results.
Right.
So I tell people all the time, if they are doing a program and they get through this certain amount of training and they did it successfully, I'm like, hey, that sounds like a good program. You can't argue with the results.
Right.
Whether it's mine or someone else's, it doesn't matter. I don't hold the monopoly on how to get through challenging military programs. There are many different ways to do it. But what you went through there is a huge roadblock. That I think many people have. Most people, probably wouldn't even consider attempting what you've done, or what you tried to do.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So there's another group there, but I think there is a very big group that are in that zone of like, I'd like to do that, but I'm not sure how I could prepare for it. I'm not sure, if I'm capable of doing that. But I will say this, and I tell this to everybody, is that your body is 10 times stronger than your mind will ever let it be. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you can kind of disengage that little part of your brain, especially the anxiety before an event, the pain of going through the event, all those little things like that make us say you want to stop. You will one day realize that your body is 10 times stronger than your mind will ever be. And you got to think about this. Our brain is built to keep our body alive and survive, right? These are natural survival thoughts and techniques and skills that your brain has come up with through eons of evolution to keep you alive. Your brain saying, no, you better not do this. That's stupid. Right. That's there to kind of keep you alive. Right. However, there are some times when the brain completely disengages and then you are actually 10 times stronger than you've ever even trained to become. Right. There are moments like that. Consider, saving your child, under something heavy, and you've never lifted weights before in your life, but somehow you've mustered the strength to be able to do that.
Right.
Things like that happen.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable. So what I try to do, and I think what a lot of these programs try to do, is try to tap into that part of the brain that, is going to give you some unbelievable abilities physically, but also some confidence into handling anything that comes at your way. Whether that is having to stay up all night to get a job done, whatever that task is. It is amazing what some of these programs do, and I admire you for trying it, and I admire you for turning around and trying it again. So you got through this roadblock. Obviously, your children, and being a good example to your children is the thing. So what's next? What's next for you?
Yeah. So good. Good commentary on that, because I think you hit on something that that you said just now, but also I think you've talked about this in your podcast, is that whole idea of mental toughness. I became obsessed with it. And it was like, well, what does it mean? This kind of elusive concept of being mentally tough. And, you watch, videos of, David Goggins or Stu Smith or whatever. And you say, that's something that's something that I will never be able to possess, or that's something that I can't understand. And I think that, sure, while, I'll never be an Olympic athlete, for example, I think we sell ourselves short with how much potential we have with quote unquote becoming mentally tough. And I think it boils down to expose, at least for me, some people might just go right off the bat and be super mentally tough and not have to go through this process. But for me, it was being exposed to difficult things incrementally and having little victories.
Yeah.
And then, I think you mentioned that in one of your podcasts. Almost, I don't remember if you talked about mental toughness being exercised like a muscle or not, but your podcast with Jeff. And for me,
Yep.
that's exactly, it started with me going, look, I have 2 kids that I want to not just take care of as babies and children, but I want to raise them to be certain kind of adults. And so I want them to be kind people. I want them to be capable people. I want them to be adjusted. I want them to be, there's a lot of fragile people out there, and I don't want to be one of them. And I don't want my kids to be one. I don't want, when something gets hard, for them to go, oh, I can't do it, or I'm going to quit, because you know what? Life is going to be full of that stuff.
Yeah.
So Stu, I started going, I got to go back and finish these things I started, because I can't teach them to do that if I don't do the same thing. I can't teach them to never quit if I've been a quitter. I can't teach them to, to do the difficult thing if I don't do the difficult thing. So these events that we talk about, these military inspired events, I looked into doing a go ruck. So you said, where have you gotten back? So within the last, 3 or 4 years, I started with a go ruck light 3 or 4 years ago. And I wasn't in the right kind of shape, or the shape I'm in now, or the shape I will be 2 years from now. But that kind of gave me my taste of, all right, let's do something challenging at a smaller scale. That's a short-term, smaller goal that I can achieve, get that patch, and say, okay, I can start building my way up to these more difficult events. And the most recent event I did that I'm pretty proud of was, it's a go ruck as well. And it was the Mogadishu Mile heavy, tough, light together.
Damn.
Which is, and it was great. It was John Bellman, who fought in that battle, was one of the top.
That's awesome. Go Ruck does, by the way, I got to give a plug to Go Ruck, because they do such a great job, not only with their great backpacks, but their events. Their events are really life-changing for people.
Absolutely. And you know what? Aside from doing like a 5K or, a turkey fun run or something like that, this gives you the opportunity, and they're not, the lights are shorter. They're not necessarily easier, but you put on your rucksack, you've got a certain amount of weight in it, and you travel, a certain distance with a team carrying heavy things and doing PT along the way. This HTL is a heavy, tough, light together. And it was based off of the events that happened in Mogadishu, the Battle of Mogadishu, in 1993, I think it was, or 1993.
Yep.
And it was a 24-hour event, followed by a 12-hour event, followed by a 6-hour event. And so I did all of them together. And in between each event, I think I slept for an hour, maybe. And I mean, it was tough.
That's a huge gut check.
It was a huge, and not only that, but look, man, I got to be honest with you. We talk about anxiety. I don't like getting on airplanes. Yeah. I used to fly time as a consultant, and so I was fine with airplanes. But then after I had kids, I started getting these panic attacks on airplanes and things. And so I live in Minneapolis. I had to get on 2 airplanes to connect to Cleveland. So I was like, that was my first gut check of the event, not even the event, but getting on the airplanes and going, okay, I got to do this, but to get through it, I have to do all these things that I'm uncomfortable doing, which again, kind of, we're talking about mental toughness, is putting yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable, because that's the only time better.
Getting comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Exactly.
It's a good definition for it.
Yes, and it's something I think about a lot. So in any case, I finished this super long event, super challenging event. A couple of the highlights were, and some of these guys there, man, are just, they can run circles around you doing PT. And one of these guys was, just amazing. He was like 50. So you see all these people coming together of varying ages and backgrounds, and you're like, it doesn't matter that I'm 43. It doesn't matter that this guy's 50 and he's amazing. And so these kind of things started giving me goals and things to look forward to, which also generated an amazing amount of happiness for me. That, you know what,
Nice.
I can do things that are difficult. I can, starting small and doing these little tiny I would have failed this go ruck if I didn't start incrementally and build myself up.
Right.
And so now where I'm at, Stu, is, now I want to get to the point where I can go back to Mark Devine's camp and get through it. And that's one of my long-term goals, to do that. And there's a couple other things I want to try as well.
Nice.
But some of the gut checks with not just the PT or the long rucks or the timed runs, or getting in Cleveland a pond full of goose poop.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
At 6 a.m, and it was 44 degrees and there was frost on the ground. Getting in there, doing hydro burpees, and then running across a field and back and doing that 10 times. I mean, there were several gut checks within this big, long gut check. But one of the biggest things is dealing with the pain in my feet, because I was wearing, I think, Bates 922s. I think that's what they are. And I think, you're pretty familiar with those, obviously.
Yeah.
And they were very broken in, but I had never worn them covering, a distance of 70 plus miles. And my feet, this event was 6 months ago, and I lost toenails and all kinds of stuff. And just taking steps became excruciating. And so it was one of those things where I'm like, don't quit, because this event will be over. Your feet will heal. But if you quit, you're never going to be able to redeem yourself from that. And so as painful as it was, and at the end of this thing, I was like, hobbling along, during the light portion of it on Sunday. It started on a Friday, and on a Sunday, I'm sitting there hobbling along with everybody else, and we're carrying these big sandbags and things. But I stayed at a Motel 6. I got on a plane, went to Cleveland, kept my gear to Motel 6, went back, slept for an hour between each event, took a shower, changed my socks and everything else, and got back out there and got it done again. And when I was finished with that, I was changed.
Nice.
I was changed. Yeah.
Nice. So I think in there somewhere you discovered that, like I said, these things are so difficult to verbalize, right? What mental toughness is. There's a hard to find definition. Some people will say, you know what, you want mental toughness, just start getting tougher, which is great. That's a great simplistic way of looking at it. But it's also, there's some mystery behind it too.
Yeah.
Such as, finding the fuel when the tank is empty. I think that is a unique definition for what mental toughness is. And it's will. You willed yourself to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And I think, Stu, again, everybody says, oh, in my opinion, and it's like, well, of course it's your opinion, but just to say, in my opinion, I overcomplicated it. I overcomplicated it for years. I mean, again, at 43, I started trying to do these things when I was 30. That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And so what do you mean by overcomplicating it? Well, first of all, it isn't, and I think you said this too, it's not in a motivational quote. It's not like some complicated recipe. It's getting comfortable, being uncomfortable in increments, increasingly more difficult each time, and building on that thought of, hey, I stuck through this. Next time I'm going to make it more difficult. Next time I did it, made it more difficult. I stuck through it until you've done and so you've gone from a go ruck light over 4 to 6 hours to the Mogadishu Mile HTL that lasted for 3 days.
And that's no joke, man. I'm telling you, let me just tell you something. That Mogadishu Mile, that long period, that is very similar to the exact same type of training we put our candidates through to prepare them for SEAL training.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a little thing they used to call mini buds that, you would go through, and it's basically a 36-hour heck day, and so instead of 120-hour hell week that you're going to endure, at your fourth week of SEAL training, it's a 36-hour version of that. And, people come to terms with a lot of things. Do I really want to do this?
Yes.
In my future. Right. And many people come back and they're either one of two things. They're like, yeah, you know what? I don't think this is for me.
Yeah.
Or they come back and they say, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to come back here. Right. And they have to, progress a little more to, they find their weaknesses in these things. And I think that's where you're starting to see your success. You've acknowledged some weaknesses. You've addressed them. You've tested them through these challenges. And now those weaknesses aren't so much weaknesses anymore. They are now borderline strengths, because we all come to the table with certain strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I think maturity, you have to realize this,
absolutely,
to move forward. So I think you're doing that. I love your term. You're overcomplicating things, because you're right. It is at some time. It is just doing it.
Right. And I think it's just doing that. And I think it's people, they sell themselves short and they overcomplicate it. It's just doing it, but it's acknowledging where you are. If you're a guy, watching this right now, that's a collegiate wrestler, you're way, 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 way beyond what I can do. But if you're someone who's never exercised before and you're 20 pounds overweight and you're sitting on the couch and you think, geez, it would be cool to do something like that and challenge myself, but I couldn't do it, you're mistaken. You can do it. It's just that you have to start incrementally and you have to build upon each tiny little victory until you start, and you say, okay, I'm going to set that goal to do a Go Ruck Light in 6 months.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
The journey's different for everybody.
Exactly.
The journey to get there is going to be different for everybody, as with your logical progressions to prepare for these type of events. Right.
And people don't realize that, Stu. I think, at least I didn't, because I thought, well, if I'm not mentally tough right off the bat, if I can't go finish this camp, then it's just not for me. That's wrong.
Yes. In fact, let me share this with you, because these are what we call stress inoculations. And that's really what they are, right? In a military term, they're stress inoculations. And they start off with you getting up out of bed early before work, when you are probably at your most comfortable you will ever be in a day, right? There's nothing more comfortable than being on a pillow with covers over you and laying down in bed. And then you hear that alarm go off at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning. And that is a very uncomfortable feeling.
Yes.
Right? The comfortable version is to go push that snooze button or turn the alarm off and just stay in bed for longer. Right? The uncomfortable version is getting up and doing that and making that a habit. And then that, once again, that is kind of like the beginning of this stress inoculation. The next step is getting out of the house and going for a run, or, and it's winter, or, jumping in a swimming pool. And it's never warm when you do that first thing in the morning. That's probably one of the hardest things for me. I dip my toe in the pool. I'm like, this is going to suck, but you jump in anyway. It takes about 100 meters for it to the cold to wear off, and you're in it. All these little things are just little stress inoculations that, like you're saying, it is building you to be a more mentally tough, resilient person, to be able to handle any future stress that comes about.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And another thing too, you mentioned seeing that 50-year-old guy in there kicking butt. That has always motivated me. When I see guys older than me doing it and getting it done, and I'm like, all right, I like this. This is really good, because there are a lot of, I think there are a lot of benefits to seeing something in order for you to believe it's true.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. In fact, there's a saying, you got to see it to believe it.
Right.
Right. And when you can see people finishing these events, you can say, you know what, I can do that. He's 20 years older than me. I should be able to do that. And I think that's probably, like I said, I write programs and I do local training here with a lot of kids that want to go into special ops programs. And I don't necessarily think I have the perfect answer for a fitness training program. I mean, it's good. It's sufficient.
It's excellent. It's excellent.
It works, but are there better ones? I can't. Yeah, there have to be. I think it would be ridiculous for me to say that I have the best program ever, because once I do that, I'm missing out on potentially the best program ever, right? And from learning, and this is all about learning.
Yeah.
So I think some humility in there is very key. That it's always good to keep learning, processes to get you to that next level. Because I find that, moving from one level to another is always a process, and it is a progression. So,
and Stu, I don't mean to jump in on what you're saying, but the humility part, like, man, get rid of the ego. Like, that was such a big deal for me. Like, yeah, I failed. I quit twice. I quit a million times. I'm not just talking, I mean, think of all the other things I quit when I was younger. I've got to acknowledge that and say it's okay, because I'm turning things around. I'm going back to finish what I started, or whatever you want to say, is I'm learning how not to quit. And I couldn't have got to this place unless I had gone through that, unless I had gone through the failures and the quitting and the desire to get back up there and finish some of these things. So I think ego can be a big roadblock into achieving things. And I think it's important to make sure that you remove that, and you start from wherever you are, and you don't have to be happy with where you are, but you can be content with going, okay, I have to start at some place, and I can't be an excellent athlete until I'm an intermediate athlete or whatever.
yes.
But one more thing that you were talking about when you said the programs you were writing. So I've tried a bunch of different programs, and a lot of them, if not all of them, are military based, predominantly special operations, SEAL based training regimens. And there's a lot of great ones out there. For me, that was the problem, is that there are so many sources, and you do your research and you look at the good sources and you go, okay, these are legitimate. The reason why I gravitated towards you is because of the programming became specific to me as a person. I wasn't getting a prefabbed email of here's what you need to do today.
Right.
Which, and again, a lot of these programs are amazing, but what's unique about yours is the programming is specific to the individual. And so that's why I kind of gravitated towards you, because you make the training regimen for me each week. And it not only is it specific to what I did last week, it's specific to my individual goals, but it's also tailored to my age. It's tailored to, whatever injuries I may be going through. And, you take the time to say, hey, look, we got to talk 15, 20 minutes each weekend. So each week when I make your program, I can make sure that it's a logical progression from what you did last time.
Yeah. I mean, that is what we do, and it does work. I've been doing it for almost 20 years, long before people really thought there was an internet business.
Yeah.
I like I said, I find that your story, where you have come from and where you are now and where you want to go, is ideal for you kind of taking it to the next level, because you had a foundation coming in and you've built upon that foundation. And now it's kind of time for you to, move on from the aches and pains of previous challenges and build upon, and let's take it to the next level.
Right.
So
right.
for me, especially for the guy over 40 and myself too, periodization programming has been a lifesaver. And, the way I have arranged these workouts throughout the year, you're in a cycle right now, I think, where we're trying to, just build more work capacity.
Yeah.
So we're kind of pushing some of the longer workouts, working on some endurance. But there's going to be a time when, we need to pull back from that and let's work on some strength training, work on some foundation training, foundation of strength. And that's going to help you be able to endure some of the harder elements, in future events that you do.
Right.
And that's just a periodization programming that, I've been doing for 20 years. And I really think it saved my life. And then the other thing that has saved me has been, after 40 years old, I started adding in a mobility day once a week. And that is kind of the key to this program as well, that I'm making for rebuilding the foundation and even taking it to the next level. And then the third phase of this program is going to be, I'm ready to compete and go after it. So you kind of have three different phases in this program, and all of them, if there's anything that's going to be every week, you're going to see a day where you're going to be still doing some cardio, but it's non-impact cardio. It's biking, it's rowing, it's elliptical, swimming, something like that. And you're going to be stretching and foam rolling for 5 minutes. So you do a cardio for 5 minutes, you foam roll for 5 minutes and or stretch. And you do that 5 times. It's still a 50-minute workout. And let me tell you, if you have aches and pains from previous life of aches and pains, this is a way to move on from that. It really does help you alleviate some of the overtraining issues you might be experiencing, as well as some of the previous burnout, fatigue, and just like I said, just injury issues from the past.
Right. You do. Yeah, you have to have that, and that's what I like about working with you, is that, it could be even midweek, and I say, hey, this is what's programmed for the week. I'm running into this problem right now. Can we make an adjustment? And you can't get that when you're following a kind of a prefabbed template. But an example for me was, you kind of said, in some of those mobility workouts, getting in the pool in chest deep water and doing some of these dynamic stretches. I've never heard of that before. I've never done it before. And I didn't know how valuable it would be, obviously, until I started doing it. But now, you forced me to get back in the pool, and I'm kind of trying to teach myself a combat swimmer stroke, and I'll have my wife tape it for you, and you can critique it and tell me how ugly it is at some point, but it'd be fun to get it down to a good point. But getting into the water, for example, you talk about foam rolling and things like that too, but getting into the water, into the chest deep water, and doing some of these dynamic stretches has been, I think, the biggest, aside from eating correctly and sleeping correctly, has been one of the biggest things that I've done to help me recover that I hadn't been doing before.
Oh, it has saved me. Like I said, I've been doing it now for almost 8 years, and I just started writing about it about 4 years ago, about this little mobility day. And just because I wanted to really make sure it was working, but I always test things out for a couple of years before I write about it. And that's with any workout that I do. But this one I had to share, and now I'm putting it in all workouts, even for the 22-year-old guy, who is, probably doesn't even need it typically,
right.
But doing it anyway, just because I've seen performance gains on that following 2 or 3 workouts after that he typically didn't have, because he didn't take this little rest day. Because here's what happens. If you put a mobility day in the middle of your week, let's say you hit it hard Monday, Tuesday, and you got a Wednesday mobility day. Well, normally that would have been a hard Wednesday workout, and then a hard Thursday workout, a hard Friday workout. And by Friday and Saturday, your workouts are just horrible.
Right.
Like you got no juice left, and you're really kind of getting by on fumes. And I've seen a big change from not only myself, even as the aging athlete, but my younger athletes who take this middle mobility day to killer performances on Friday and Saturday, which they were lacking before.
Right.
So
they end their week on a high note with that, that amazing workout, because they had that opportunity to kind of have an active recovery, if you will, or mobility, or whatever you want to call it, like during the week. But that's also key for injuries too, because I have 3 herniated discs. I've got a torn disc. I have bone spurs. Like my lumbar area is a mess.
Yeah,
and so I have to work with that. It's not something where I say, "Oh, I can't do this because X, Y, and Z."
Right.
I figure out a way to work with it, and these mobility days help me do that. I think they not only help give my body that kind of active recovery that I need, but they also kind of help with some of these injuries that I'm dealing with as well, and make some of the other harder workouts possible.
Yeah, I love it. So so let's just kind of change the topic a little bit and just talk about recovery and maintenance a little more. Is your life stressful? How would you describe your life? Normal, stressful life. Do you have stress in your life?
Absolutely. And so,
Right.
I kind of told you, being an anxious person, that I've worked really hard to kind of, deal with it and have it make me more powerful. I know that sounds weird, but in my own mind, if you can kind of harness some of those things and overcome them. But yeah, so initial stress of kind of being an anxious person, and then I have a career, and I have 2 kids, and some of my friends my age have like 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. I have a 2-year-old who walks around drooling and being crazy.
Right.
So yes, it's and my wife works full time. So she works full time. I work full time. Part of my work that I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time. And so I want to get to jiu-jitsu a couple times a week, and trying to fit that in, trying to fit in all these workouts, trying to get up, trying to get the kids to school, trying to make sure they get to bed, trying to make sure they get their teeth brushed. I mean, everything.
Yes.
And, and so it's that like, oh, I don't have time, and like,
yes.
I've seen people say that, and I get it, but and then you'll hear people say, well, you need to make time. And it's just that simple.
Yes, I love it. So obviously everybody's life is stressful, and I asked that in a joking manner, but you are relieving your stress through these activities now.
Oh, aside from being a father, and enjoying my family, I would say these, this is more than a hobby to me. So I don't want to cheat. Not that hobbies are cheap, but to me, I don't want to cheapen it by calling it a hobby, because it's more than that. But it is aside from being a father, it's the single biggest source of happiness for me. Yeah. Knowing that like I'm training, knowing that I've been like, it's cool to say, hey, you know what? I failed all these things and I didn't achieve these things, and I decided that wasn't acceptable. And so now I'm going to go back and fix that. And to have achieved little things incrementally more difficult over time, that brings me a tremendous source of not just stress relief, but general happiness.
Good.
Yeah, which in itself is stress relief, being happy and kind of balancing out things. So yeah, making time, it's like the other night, I think I texted you, I was at the gym, until it closed at midnight. And so I'm not getting up at 4:30 after I get home, and my central nervous system is all jacked up because I've been working out for a couple hours. Yeah. So, I need to get the rest too. But yeah, it was Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving. And you know what? What do I want it to be? Do I want to go out to the bar with my friends I haven't seen, which social time is important too? Yeah. Or do I want to these goals. And if I want to achieve these goals, there's going to be give and take. And I'm going to have to find times to work out. And for me, that was the night before Thanksgiving while everyone else was out. My wife was home with the kids, and I was at the gym until midnight.
Nice.
You know, so that's how I chose to spend my time. How do you want to spend your time?
Yeah.
You know?
Very, very good point. So here's another thing too. You know, when your life is stressful, and all of ours are. I mean, there's no getting around that. You know, sometimes the last thing you ever want to do on that very stressful day is to do a butt kicking workout that's going to stress you out even more physically. You know what I mean? But there is a kind of a fight or flight thing that occurs here, right? So you know, after a very stressful day, you know, doing something challenging for 15, 20 minutes is great. It's a great way to kind of get that fight, flight, you know, hormones out of your body, you know,
Right.
kind of help you metabolize them through some activity. Then you go through a nice, steady, relaxing breathing cycle. And it can be a walk. It could be as gentle as a walk. It could be a nice, easy jog, low impact cardio, you know, to get the parasympathetic nervous system going again and just breathing through it. Because, you know, deep breathing, meditation, easy cardio, getting more oxygen into your body is a great way to metabolize stress hormones.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's where a lot of people go wrong is they either do one of two things. They either don't do anything, which is bad, or they just crush it in the weight room and just adding stress to your central nervous system on top of all this daily stress that we're putting into our lives. And it's harder to recover from that.
Oh, and you know, that is such a balance because, you know, when I was talking about being at the gym till midnight, you know, I had gotten there at like 6. And, you know, it's typically not good for you to do a 6-hour workout, but, you know, I had been sick earlier that week and I didn't want to get behind. So I stacked 3 days of workouts into one. And so I wouldn't do that every week.
Sure.
You know, I might only do something like that once a month, but
that's a good gut check too.
It's a
but
great,
once again, you know, there's always a tangible aspect to training, but then there are intangible aspects to training that are very difficult to get to unless you put in the time.
That's right. And you can't, if mental toughness has a lot to do with flexing that mental muscle and building the mental muscle, then some of the only times that you can do that is when you're doing something like a 6-hour workout. Because I remember specifically sitting there, and you know, when I'm working out, I think a lot about a lot of things. I think about reporting back to you. I think about, you know, not quitting and feeling good about that. But one of the most important things is I know that when, you know, I'm halfway through this workout and I still got a long way to go, and I'm weak and I'm not feeling like I want to do it, I know that that's a critical time for me to practice flexing the mental muscle, because it's there when I'm doing a 40-minute workout or everything's feeling good, I'm not really practicing it because it isn't tough. I kind of talk about leadership being that way too. It's easy to lead when everything's going well, right? What kind of leader you are. And to me, what kind of leader you are truly comes out when the crud hits the fan, so to speak.
Sure. Now, I would say this. I'm hoping the day of Thanksgiving that you were able to eat for more fuel and sit there and relax and do very little after a butt-kicking 6-hour workout. Good.
I walked the dogs. That's all I did. I was gonna throw a rock on and do a light rock, but I said, you know what? No. Be smart.
Yeah, there you go.
Be smart, because another thing is, you know, that voice, the quit demon, right, comes in and says, hey, if you were tough, you would do this. Hey, if you really want to achieve your goals, you would do this. Hey, if you're really going to, you know, get from A to B, you would do this. But that maturity has to be there to differentiate between not quitting and being smart and planning ahead. And so you got to be able to do that.
Absolutely. I would say one of my biggest jobs training young young people who want to go into these professions, especially the special ops professions, is not coming up with great workouts that build them and prepare them for what their future task is. That is one task I need to do. However, I think the biggest thing that I do is I pull the reins on them and say, no, you don't need to do that, and say, why don't you take a recovery day today instead of, preparing for a 50-mile racing event.
Right.
Let's pull back.
Right.
And, because I've seen it happen way too many times, guys that are hard chargers push and push and push and push, and then something breaks. In fact, that's why I even wrote the first tactical fitness for the Athlete Over 40 book, was because of that. And it's my own story. My own story was me breaking down at age 28 after year and year and year of training ridiculously hard. And with success, but in the end, that success will bite you if you don't learn how to start training for longevity and being smart about your stress that you're accumulating every day.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that has a lot to do with removing that ego.
Yes.
And it's especially difficult for me, Stu, because I'm someone who's trying to come back from failures. And so, when you're trying to come back from failures and you're really, I guess I'll say dedicated or motivated to do it, you want to make sure that you're not quitting.
Yes.
And so it's really hard to kind of sometimes differentiate between, you need a mobility day, you need a rest day, and no, you got to get out there and get it done. Even if you have to crawl through it, you have to get it done. So I have to learn how to, aside from the program days, I might have to take a day that wasn't programmed in there and make it a mobility day.
Yes, absolutely.
I need to be in tune with myself.
I would say every week I try to do a mobility day. There may be 1 week out of the month where I skip it and move on. And that's okay, if you want to do it, but then I make sure the next week I don't skip it.
Right.
And some weeks, I tell you what, we do this really hard weekend workout. We do it, what we call a special ops triathlon. That's, probably about a 5-hour event. It's pretty kick butt. And I make sure when we come back on Monday, we do a mobility day.
Yeah.
And then we get a couple good workouts in. And on Friday, we do another mobility day. So sometimes there are actually times and places where 2 mobility days in a week make sense.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much you're crushing it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of unique, like things that you'll put into either a regular workout or a mobility day that are, I'll use the term underrated, even though I'm not certain they are, because I don't know too much about who else uses them, but like reverse push-ups or arm haulers or swimmers. I never did things like that before, but you do arm haulers and reverse push-ups and swimmers or birds or whatever, and they're hard, but you get your muscles flowing and you get your blood flowing and get your muscles working, and they've kind of become like critical components of mobility for me.
Yeah.
As I go through these programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you're doing. That your whys, I think, are not only just fun challenges to get you to these events and accomplish some things that you want to accomplish, but in the end, they're going to help you with your ability to be the guy who can help people.
Yes.
And in the end, that's what this is really, I want you to know, this is what I think it should come down to for all of us, is be able to help people, as well as, help yourself too. I mean, because there are those times too, you have to be able to help yourself, in certain situations.
Right.
And the one thing too is, don't forget that fitness is a journey and not a destination. There's no like, okay, I'm done. I've reached my destination. Like you said, it is a hobby. It should be considered a hobby. I make jokes all the time that, once I started, working out and writing about it for a living, I kind of lost my hobby, which is true. I kind of did. But at the same time, I, found some fun ways to, still make it a hobby. even though I write about it. But, the goal is look, experiment with different programs, learn how to train, learn how to, cycle through different elements of fitness. And we're talking about all the elements of fitness. We're talking about endurance, strength, muscle stamina, flexibility, mobility, speed, and agility. All of those things are elements that we need to be better tactical athletes. And we have to be good at all of them. There can't be one that we cannot do, and be considered, completely, a ready tactical athlete. For instance, like if you can't swim, you are ineffective on 75% of this earth.
Right.
Which is a horrible thing to think about.
Right.
And there are many people who cannot swim. Take a lesson. Local YMCA. Take a beginner kids lesson. If you need to. If you're an adult, there's nothing wrong with just getting an instructor and learning how to swim.
Get shorts on and go sit in the shallow end of the pool for a little bit. Start somewhere.
Yeah, tread water.
Yeah,
exactly.
Stu, I just want to say real quick, it helps to know one of the obstacles that I had through this is that you think about Navy SEALs and you think about superheroes, right? And you think about people who don't have flaws. You think about people who don't have weaknesses. You think about people who are good at everything, and they don't have anything that they don't have anything they need to work on. And I started learning that no, everybody has things they need to work on. Everybody has things they want to get better at. Everybody has things they failed at. And as soon as you start realizing that, it helps make it more doable, because you say, yeah, things are possible. Because these guys who are these superheroes have things they need to work on too. It's something that we all face. So you're not unique in that. You're not unique in that you failed. You're not unique in that, you need to lose 20 pounds and get off the couch and you haven't run or whatever it is. Yep. You just got to start doing it. And the kindness piece too. I think kindness is so underrated. And, when you talk about helping people, I think that's another source of happiness. And for me, that phrase, nice guys finish last.
Yeah.
You always hear that. And I feel like what a shame it is to have this thought that in order to not finish last, you have to be mean or you can't be a kind person. If you can't be kind and finish first, I think there's something wrong with your approach. So, and everyone says, don't mistake my kindness for weakness and don't be a doormat. Of course.
Yeah.
But I think that wanting to help somebody else is critical as well, whether it's, one of your exercise programs or just opening the door for somebody at the grocery store.
Yeah, exactly. It's the world is a much better place when we are.
Agreed. Agreed.
So. Well, I will say this. I think we've hit all the things I wanted to hit in this conversation. Now, the rest of this project is people will read on will be, exercises, workouts arranged in a way where, I'm going to phase this thing out. And this one's for beginners, and we're going to rebuild you if you are injured. And we're going to focus on all the different elements of fitness. And it may take some time, but be patient, because I will promise you in a year from now, which seems like a blink. Think about this. Think about where you were last year at this time, last Thanksgiving or whenever, we were, and this is just like yesterday. So a year from now, you will wish you had started.
Absolutely.
Today.
Absolutely.
And I love that saying, because it is so true that time flies, and you can get a year's worth of activity under your belt in a blink of an eye, because that's what it's going to feel like next year at this time.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's a journey, man. It's a succession of successful workouts, a succession of successful days, a succession of successful weeks and months. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but accept that and have fun with that. And that's really what's brought me happiness, is like, man, I may not even be halfway there. I'm excited to know that I'm going to go back and crush these goals, and that, I'm going to be so much more fit a year from now and 2 years from now. than where I am today. And yeah, I'm anxious to meet my goals, but it might take another 2 years. It might take, I don't know how long. I don't care.
Right.
It's the process that I've really started to focus on and fall in love with the process.
There
So
you go.
that meeting these goals is almost a byproduct of the process. Focus on that, not the end result.
Yeah, I love that, because I mean, do what you like to do first. You know, whatever gets you into the weight room, whatever gets you into the gym, you know, whatever exercise you like to bench press, make sure there's, you know, bench press every day when you go into the workout. Well, not every day, but you know, every other day you should be doing bench press as part of your workout. You love to bench press, do it. But then start adding some supplementals that help balance out that love that gets you into the weight room.
Right.
You know, also work your lower body, work your upper back, you know, work your core, you know, work your cardio, you know, all of those things, you know, whatever gets you into the weight room, do it. It might be a spin class that you enjoy, you know, do the spin class, go lift weights afterwards, or vice versa.
Yeah.
You know, do something that you like. Otherwise, it makes this journey a little more difficult. But there are also many things that I didn't like before because I'd never tried them. So you got to go try it. See if you like it. And give it a shot. Next thing you know, you're going to be on this new journey, and it might be triathlons, it might be marathons, it might be Go Ruck challenges, it might be the, you know, Seal Fit challenge. You know, whatever those goals are that you have, you know, can kind of grow from every day, just getting into the weight room, building some persistence, you know, and, you know, having a little bit of motivation at first, but eventually that motivation is going to evolve into habits that you've created. And when you can't rely on your motivation, what do you rely on?
Your discipline.
Discipline. You've disciplined yourself through all these persistent daily challenges that you've gone through, that now it's like, well, I'm not really motivated to work out, but I'm going to go work out anyway.
Which happens a lot sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know?
There are many, many times I don't feel like getting up at 5:15 and working out with guys 20 years younger than me.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know I always will feel better after doing it.
Yes. Absolutely.
And that's the key. So, Gerald, I want to thank you so much for your time, for doing this for me, because like I said, your story is so common about people who have, you know, had a different background, but now have similar goals of being, you know, there for people and being able to provide assistance if needed, or be able to just plain help yourself. You know, I mean, getting out of a burning house requires some ability.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, and all these things, you know, you can rely on your fitness. One day, I want you to say, and anybody who's reading this or listening to this, is to say that my fitness level saved my life.
Yes. Yes.
And don't let it be the reason why you die, or the reason why you were unable to help someone you love.
Right.
So that's how important fitness is. And that's what tactical fitness is. So.
Absolutely, man. And that's part of it for me too.
Yeah, I love it. So, hey, Gerald, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stu. I hope you have a great day. I really enjoy working with you, and I'm looking forward to many more workout sessions and training sessions with you as well.
Awesome. All right. We just